Stacy?
Here.
There's nobody else sitting down there, is there?
Nope.
Steve. Steve, oh, Steve. Yeah,
Here.
Steve, sorry, Steve.
It's all good.
Looking too far away. All right. Notice of meeting?
The meeting was properly noticed.
I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 If you would all please stand with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to have a abbreviated comments from citizens section because we have to get on to the budget hearing and annual meeting, so we're going to limit it to 20 minutes. If I don't have any slips at this point, if anybody wants to bring some up. Okay. Yes, please. That way we can know who all spoke. Did you want to come up and speak and fill it out? Oh, you got it with you. Okay. You got that homework, but you didn't hand it in. Okay. No, just put. We'll get it. Oh.
You can hand it to Julie.
Julie will
down
get
there.
it.
She'll
Yeah.
hold it. Thank you,
That's
sir.
where it's going anyway. So. Yes,
Go ahead,
please.
sir.
Please.
Go ahead, sir.
My name is Jim Treadwell. I'm a resident of Pewaukee. I don't need my address.
It's on the card, right?
Okay, correct. So my name is Jim Treadwell. I'm a resident of Pewaukee. Had multiple children go through the Pewaukee School District, and I was made aware of some things that may or may not be going on, actually just this afternoon, and so I'm just here to vote my support for the actions of the Pewaukee School Board, and we'll leave it to you guys to make your decisions with regards to the budget and whatever it is that you guys do. And I appreciate you're all, whether you're volunteered or lightly paid, it's an underappreciated job that all of you do. So that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, then I'm going to, right over to Julie.
Julie can take the slip.
So I also heard of a few things that might happen at this committee meeting tonight, and I came here to support. I have 3 children in this school district. I'm very happy. I wish their grades were better, but that's on them, not necessarily the school district. But I've been very happy with what the school district has done. My family's happy here, and I hope that you guys will continue the good work that you've done in the past moving forward. So I support what the other gentleman said as well.
Thank you, sir. Could
Thank
you
you.
just state your name?
Your
and
name?
that you're-
Sure, my name is Luis Marrero. I'm a resident, and you got my address there. I live in 5 Fields up the street.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll try it for the third time. Any more? Okay, with that, I'm going to go on to salutes and recognitions. I'm going to first open this to the board if they have any salutes or recognitions to make. Nope. Seeing none, I'm going to open it up to Mike, Dr. Katie, and the rest of the administrators.
Yeah, Danielle or John, anything before I just recognize? I just want to recognize Julie Toole for all the setup and all the communication for the annual meeting. I want to recognize Miranda Kozlik for putting together the annual report and those materials and getting that out and published. It turned out really good. I want to recognize John and Steve for all of your work in preparing for the budget hearing this evening. So I'd like to recognize all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda then. We have minutes from the previous meeting, some correspondence. There's a gift there from Danny Moon family for Pewaukee High School Athletics. And then we have policies that are here for the second reading. Unless there's any corrections or questions, I'll seek a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That
That moves us down to Business Affairs Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Yes, we met earlier tonight in the library at 6 PM. We looked through the check registers, which are typical for this time of year, fiscal year starting on July 1st. What we see in this check registers is common for renewals of all the insurance subscription services, curriculum renewals, a number, of course, of just all the normal employment costs and benefits costs. So at this point, all the things that we saw in the check registers all checked out, and there were a couple of questions, but everything was adequately addressed, and questions were answered by John. In the financial reports, very little activity on the income side, since we don't get any funding from the state of any matter until later in the fiscal year, and normal expenses that we saw in the expense side of the financial report. So I think everything looked in order, and the committee agreed.
I need a motion to accept the report from the Business Affairs Committee.
Move to approve? Second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. That moves us down to personnel issues. We have one resignation to consider today. Do you want to carry us through, Mike?
Yeah, we have one teacher resignation, Amanda Edwards, who has served the district very well. Amanda's been a teacher for a number of years, found an opportunity in a district closer to home. She had quite a bit of a commute, so I know it was a difficult choice for her, but we certainly wish Amanda well and thank her for her service, and I'd seek your approval of the resignation of Amanda Edwards.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. That takes us, we don't have any employment at this time and no leave of absence requests. Is that still true?
That's correct. I know we have kind of a holding place, what is that, August 23rd, I believe it is, right, in case we need one for any late hires, which we probably will need, right? Generally, we do that right before the welcome back breakfast, just to approve any late hires. So I know there is, obviously, Amanda's position is being interviewed, so that's when we would pick up any remaining hires, but there's none at this time, and we have no leaves.
Fantastic. All right. Well, then let's go through some upcoming activities. We have the new teacher program welcome, which are switching to a luncheon to a breakfast. Steve, I understand you won't be able to make it?
Yeah, I'm going to be in Chicago the night before, and it'll be too quick to try to get back for that, unfortunately.
Understand. Okay. So, Julie, do you need everybody to let you know? Okay, so,
Julie, is that the one that we're needed at 9? Or
No.
should we be at the 7:30?
Yeah, just the 9 o'clock, and you're
Okay.
welcome to come at 7:30 for that's just where we kind of greet and welcome the new staff. 9 o'clock is when we do the breakfast, which will be done in the Asa Clark cafeteria. So, because the renovations to the high school cafeteria won't be quite finished
Okay.
by that time.
that's going to be a question for me.
Yeah.
All right, then the next Monday, we've got the welcome back breakfast for everybody, 7:30 here in the Asa Clark cafeteria.
Correct.
I'm guessing it's because things might not be done yet.
Yeah, John's been working closely with the vendors. We expect kind of the final pieces of the new serving line to actually be installed that day. So not quite ready for putting on a meal for the staff at that time. So we'll just be down the holiday. So, but it should be ready to go. We'll have some pieces of equipment that we'll have to punt on for the first couple of weeks of year. But that John talked to Clayton today. That shouldn't be an issue.
No paninis? All right. Then we have, that same day, we've got a board learning session in service with council. So Mark will be there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I believe Mark and Alana from Deal Vetter will be here to present just to give legal update for relevant,
changes.
legal issues that are specific to board member work.
13th is business affairs and regular meeting. The 27th is policy and a regular meeting. And then we've got that entire schedule put out for the year here. There's also the calendar for the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance calendar. So, That brings us down to fatigue is showing. Legislative advocacy update. So, does anybody want to contribute to that discussion?
John, anything that you want to, John, you're down here, I'm used to you being on my other side. Anything you want to contribute, or things that are coming up? I don't think there's a whole lot happening at the moment.
Right. At the moment, the state budget has been signed. We're waiting for some clarification on a couple of items and how they will impact the 21-22 budget as we start moving forward in our planning for the year. But other than that, not a lot of significant activity.
Yeah, I know we're waiting for some clarification. I think the state is waiting on the U.S. Department of Ed for some clarification on the use of ESSER funds, in terms of what is the latitude with using those funds for school operations. So that's a big thing that we're waiting to hear about. But other than that, there's not, since the biennium passed, there's not a ton of activity that's specific to K-12.
In front of that. Okay. Well, that brings us down to adjournment. Somebody would like to make a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
The budget hearing will start right at 7 o'clock. It's, the budget hearing is required by law prior to the annual meeting, which will be at 7:30. So we are adjourned for now. Superintendent of Business Affairs, I screwed it up again. John Gann, Ann Wells, and Stacy Newcomer, and Ann Wright, sorry. And the guy strolling up here is Mark Olson. Mark is our attorney, yep. So, since I called everybody's name, I don't think I need to do roll call. The purpose of this budget is to provide a hearing for an expression of public opinion to leave the governing body free to act as it determines to be in the best public interest. Electors at this hearing do not have the power to amend the budget as proposed, nor to approve or disapprove, but to ask questions. So after the budget presentation, we'll open it up for citizen comments and our questions. Again, like before, please come down to the microphone, state your name and address this time, and ask your question, and we'll take it from there. With that, I'm going to turn it over to, I guess, John and Steve.
Yep, so the purpose of the session, as Brian outlined, is to provide highlights of the past year, financial performance, and a look forward to the future year coming up. And we'll start with a Treasury Report from John.
Through some slides. Okay, first of all, I'd like to orient you with the Treasury Report. This document you can find in the back. This has also been published on the webpage for the district. And what we're going to focus is on the center of this document, page 20 to 23, 24, which highlights our financial operations from the 2021 fiscal year, and also a look forward then into the 21-22 budget that we're proposing for the district. So there's several funds that the district operates under, and we're going to start at the back of that on page 22 and 23 of the Treasurer's Report, and we'll give you some high-end information or higher level information about each of those funds and what our financial performance was and how we finished the last fiscal year. The first fund that's in there is a special education fund. You'll see that as Fund 27. This fund always will have a net balance of 0 at the end of the year because the net cost of providing students with disabilities the education is transferred from the general fund. So this will always end up with a 0 balance at the end of the fiscal year, and we had total expenditures in this fund of about $4.9 million or $4.3 million last year. The next fund that we highlight is our debt service fund, and this Fund 39 represents all of the expenditures paying for debt related to referendum-approved projects within the district. So the debt service on all those projects carries through here. Our district has been growing for a number of years, and the levies for the debt paying for those improvements, the capital improvements around the campus, are always paid through here. At the end of the 2021 fiscal year, we had a principal-only balance of about $47 million in that fund. At the end of the 21-22 fiscal year, we anticipate that principal balance to be about $41 million in those funds. The next set of funds that we deal with are the capital projects funds, and you'll see those listed in there as Fund 41, 43, 45, and 49. Each one of those represents a level of funding that's restricted to use only for capital projects within the district. So the debt service on the referendum-approved projects goes through Fund 39. All of the expenses associated with those projects and the payment of those expenses and the revenues from it run through Fund 43. As you can see, the plan is during the 21-22 fiscal year, from a budget standpoint, is to close those projects out. We're completing the last 7 or 8 projects of that referendum this summer. We plan on having those closed out this fall, at which point any proceeds that remain from those funds will be transferred over to the referendum debt service fund. We're restricted that that's the only place they can go. They will go there to offset future levies and future debt service costs associated with the projects that were completed. Fund 50 is our food service fund, and food service is one of those funds that may have had the most significant impact from COVID. If you remember, in the 1920 fiscal year, schools were closed in March, on March 13th. And we were also under the direction to maintain our level of funding and level of services as part of receiving some of the federal stimulus money that was associated with that closure. That resulted in no sales for food service, but we were maintaining the cost of keeping the staff employed and keeping them working while we provided home lunches and things of that nature. So we ran a deficit in that fund in the 1920 fiscal year. That deficit occurred again this past year with days where we didn't have students on site, but it was much smaller. And we anticipate returning back to profitability in the food service fund for the 21-22 school year.
Excuse me, John. Did you mean to advance slides at all?
No.
Yeah, okay.
It's in the materials.
Gotcha, okay.
Going back then, we go to the general fund, and the general fund is the majority of the expenditures for the district. The general fund finished, now I get to advance. So the general fund is where most of our operations are funded out of for the district. We had revenues that exceeded expenditures in the 21-22 fiscal year by about 4.4%. COVID brought a lot of unknowns into the district and a lot of variability in costs. We experienced some areas, if you think of like athletics, where teams weren't traveling as much. You don't have to pay for officials. We had a lot of savings that were generated from those types of activities. Transportation generated savings for us on those days where buses weren't running, that we were able to save some money. Also on the cost of providing some of the services to students with disabilities, where the facilities where they were being educated were closed or were virtual. So our cost of sending students for those services dramatically decreased, where we were able to generate some savings. At the end of the year of the 2021 fiscal year, we have a fund balance or an operating reserve in the general fund of about $10 million. Represents about 29% of our operating costs, of our expenses in the general fund. That puts us on the low end of most districts in the area around us at that. Because of the timing of our revenues in the district, at the board meeting, Steve had talked about from the business affairs standpoint, the timing of revenues, our district is highly reliant on property taxes. Those property taxes don't start coming in until January. So we have to operate for about 6 months from July through December on the revenues that we have in this reserve, and we rely on cash flow borrowing. So we borrow on an annual basis. This allows us to reduce that reliance on that cash flow borrowing as we look at the next several years going forward. Next thing, just another note on the financial performance. As you can see here, this is the fund balance. One of the Moody's consistently has given us feedback on when we do debt issuances, when they've done reports for us. There's been consistent feedback that significant improvement in the reserves from the district could lead to a reduced or to an improved bond rating. Improved bond rating results in lower cost of interest for us as we're issuing new debt. The district has been growing since 1985. So as we look at our next 10-year cycle, 2025-26 will be the next time where we do this facility master planning process to estimate where are we at, where are we going to be for the next 10 years, and what will our facilities need. We're preparing now through our financial performance to build the groundwork to reduce the cost of that debt if we need to issue additional debt. With that, I'll hand it to Steve, who will talk about the upcoming budget and what the parameters are.
Thanks, John. So that's how we did last year. And now we'll take a look at what we forecast for the year ahead. We'll start with enrollment, because enrollment is the beginning of everything that we do as a school district. It's why we're here. It's also the main driver of the funding mechanisms that exist in the state of Wisconsin for school districts. So what you'll see is a return to we expect a return close to the level of enrollment that we experienced in the 2019-2020 school year. We did see a decrease of about 3% enrollment last year due to the COVID situation, parents choosing to either keep their kids at home or homeschool. We think many of those students will come back to our district this year, which is positive for us, as enrollment is a positive driver financially for our district and helps us sustain many of the programs that we offer. So we're expecting most of those students to return. In the last earlier tonight, we talked briefly about this topic, and things are on pace to hit the projection that you see on the page of an enrollment FTE of 2758, which supports all of the budget discussions that you'll see that follows. This is our 5-year outlook for where enrollment we think is going to go in the years ahead. This is based on demographic studies that we contracted with 2 independent organizations a few years ago to look at what's happening in the district. They look at all the buildable land that exists in our district and what's likely to occur in terms of new housing development. So our forecast is to continue the 1 to 1.5% annual growth in student population that we serve. There are a number of housing developments, if you've been out in the community, you know this, that are currently under construction, numbering at least 130 units, whether it's in the village of Pewaukee or the city of Pewaukee that's part of the Pewaukee School District. You'll note a slight difference from this page and the prior page. If you look at the 2021 numbers, this page will say 2821 versus the prior page, which said 2758. It's just a difference of a calculation in how the state qualifies certain students. 4K students count at 60% of a full head count, and we get some difference when it comes to summer school. So this is the number that is the total student that we serve, and then the prior page is how it's calculated out from a state budgeting and state funding perspective, accommodating for that 60% factor. So if you were wondering why those numbers are different, that's what that is. We're in a very enviable position. We really are here in Pewaukee, in the Pewaukee School District. You can look at this chart that shows the comparative enrollment changes in 15 years, Pewaukee versus others. This is very advantageous for us to be leading the way with a nearly 30% growth in enrollment over that period. When you look at what happens to a school district with declining enrollment, you can clearly understand the value that this brings to our community and shows the, I believe, the highly desirable educational offerings, plus our demographics of room to build and our location in the Lakes Country area, making Pewaukee a desirable place for people to want to move and bring kids into our district. As we think about budget conditions moving forward, our goal always is to offset operational costs by using open enrollment and positive enrollment to help bring in additional funds for our district. Our property value growth remains strong, and a steady 5-year trend of about 3.4%. And we anticipate an overall operating budget of $37.8 million. Of course, the final state budget and how that all works out as the budget decisions and some of the considerations are worked through could change this slightly, but we're working to stay on top of how that looks, and we'll know more as the year comes into fruition and we get into some of the finalization of the state numbers. John described the full year operating budget, and it is shown in your booklet on page 21 and 22. There you go, bottom of page 21. So the proposed budget at this time is $35.98 million. That, of course, will be finalized in October once the state certifies enrollment counts through the third Friday process, and the final numbers come in from across the state from current year spending, or past year spending for all the districts in the state of Wisconsin. If we look at where we spend our money as a district, we're primarily a people business. That's how we deliver our services to our students and our community. We insource all of our critical capabilities as best we can, and then wherever we have a need that we can't fill with existing staff, we reach out through the purchase service section, which, as you see, is about 17% of our budget on an annual basis to buy services from others where it makes more sense for us to outsource that versus insource that work. We always, of course, make sure that the most strategic things that we need to support are the ones that we handle first with the budget dollars we have available for us. Our approach to budgeting in the district is driven on around efficiency and effective planning. We work very hard to understand the future needs of our district and prepare for those so we don't have surprises. We leverage a lot of shared and cooperative services wherever we can with other districts, other communities, the Pewaukee, the village and the city, other school districts in the neighborhood through our health care cooperative. And we work very hard to drive down the operational costs of the district so we can put as many dollars that we have available into the classrooms, into the educational experience of our children so that we fulfill our mission of opening the door for every child's future. And we use our strong reputation in the district to attract students from outside Pewaukee through our open enrollment process that Julie gets to have such fun with every year at this time of year. Balancing the budget. So you'll see this is our upcoming year and how we look at this from a staffing perspective. This is actually one of the smallest staffing increases we've had recently at 7.62 full-time equivalent staff member growth in the upcoming year. This includes some amount of contingency where we don't know exactly what will end up coming into the district. When you look at people who move into the community, we often have to plan a little contingency for additional support services and aids for students. It may come in that had previous years gone to a school outside of our district. So there is a little contingency planning in this just to make sure that we have the services support that we need for the students who might move in the coming year. And finally, we'll get into the tax levy for the upcoming year. And this is shown on page 24, if I remember that right.
Yep.
24 of your annual report. So here's our general fund at $22.6 million. That's our operating expense for the district. Our debt service, we're going to levy $6.27 million for long-term debt that John talked about that we pay via Fund 39. Capital improvements, we plan to levy $10,000, so that's Fund 41. That's our long-term capital planning and capital improvement budget for a total budget levy of $28.9 million. The final budget, and I'll get to this on another slide here, the final budget will be set in October after the state finalizes the funding for the 2021-22 school year. So that's an overall tax levy increase of just $350,000 or 1.2%. Based on a property growth rate average of the last 5 years of all the taxed properties in the Pewaukee School District of 3.4%, that would drive a tax rate decrease of 19 cents per $1,000 of property value, equalized value, sorry, I should say that correctly, of equalized value for property tax payers in the district. This is a long-term chart showing what that equalized tax rate has been throughout time. You can see the many years, I don't know, 22 years, I think, 22 years showing on the page. So you can see over the long haul, we are definitely lowering the effective rate of operating the school district versus the property values of the district while increasing substantially, as you saw previous pages, the number of students that we serve. So I'd say, and my assessment of this is, and what I'd share with you is, we're becoming more and more efficient as a district at delivering high-quality education over time, as this chart shows. And just to close this portion out before we get into some questions, it's important, and Brian spoke to this earlier, the Board of Education approves a tax levy in October. Once enrollment, state aid, and tax-based information are verified, the tax levy must conform to the state revenue limit, and that final information is certified by the state on October 15th. So we will levy our
actual tax levy after the certification on October 15th. And before I get into questions, I just want to make one final statement. In January 2022, at the Wisconsin State Education Conference, John Gahan will be recognized as the 2022 WASBO School Business Manager of the Year. The award, this award is given annually to recognize outstanding contributions to the district, community, and the profession. John deserves this recognition for the innovative solutions he creates to drive increases in classroom resources through operational and financial efficiency. John is a past president of WASBO and an adjunct professor in the UW-Whitewater Graduate Program for Business Officers, frequently serves as a mentor for new business officers, and is a highly sought-after resource in Wisconsin for his expertise in public education school finance. And so I want to say thank you, John, for your decades of service to Pewaukee School District and our community, and congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. And now John will answer any questions you have.
Please come down if you have a question about the budget.
While we're waiting with questions, I can just add a little bit to that description. Steve did a great job of talking about the process. Where we're at right now, the board has presented a preliminary budget in April of every year. We do that strategically because we need to know where we stand early in the process. When we have hard-to-fill positions, we want the board to be aware of what those positions are going to be so we can go out and attract the best candidates to bring them into the district. So real early this process goes on. The board adopts that preliminary budget in May. And once that budget is adopted, any modification to that goes through a legal process, through a statutory process for modification. So we bring to the annual meeting the preliminary budget that was presented to the board and approved in April and May, so that we don't have multiple budgets coming all the time through to the community. So it's a matter of clarity that we can bring this forth. The things that we're waiting for yet is equalization aid, and equalization aid is contingent on what happens with all 424 school districts in the state. That's why October 15th, that's certified after everybody submits their annual reports for their performance from the previous fiscal year. We also have to get our property values certified in the fall, and most importantly, student enrollment. You saw the charts here. Student enrollment on the increase. Increasing student enrollment that's on a steady basis is ideal for revenue limits. We've been under revenue limits since 1993 in school districts in the state of Wisconsin. Slow growth in enrollment allows your revenues to keep pace with that growth in expenditures that come along with additional students. So you don't want super rapid growth or big declines. That revenue limit, we cannot exceed that. If you exceed the revenue limit, you're penalized the following year as a reduction to your revenue limit. So we want to hit that as close as we can every year. Once the other numbers are certified, the third Friday in September count for enrollment is a huge number on it, so it's very important. That happens in September. Once those three variables are done, we'll present to the board what that final budget looks like on October 25th, I believe it is this year, Monday, October 25th, at which point they'll do their due diligence of reviewing where we're at with the budget, and also statutorily, they have to set that levy by November 1st, so we can report it to the communities. Any questions?
We have 4 minutes. You can ask questions if you'd like. So John, let me ask the questions. So what do we project state support for our district to be in 2021-22?
So our budget projects about a 16% increase in equalization aid from what it was last year. Again, that number is relative to what everybody else. So you may have seen published July 1st, the state statutorily, the DPI has to give a July 1 aid estimate. That's based on everybody's budget reports. So however close budget was to actual will determine what that aid number or how close that July 1 estimate is for us. We're projecting about a 16% increase in equalization aid, which then you have the revenue limit. When you subtract the aid, what's left is the property tax levy in the general fund.
So when state aids go up,
If our aid comes in higher than we anticipated, levy goes down.
thank you. Any questions?
If not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn this budget hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
We've got 4 minutes before the next one starts, huh? Yep, thank you. I'm going to call the annual meeting to order. Since we have people online, I'm going to do introductions again, this time hopefully without any more mistakes. Starting at this end, we're going to introduce our attorney, Mark Olson, the district attorney, board member Stacy Newcomer, and we have Ann Wright, our assistant superintendent for building services, business services. I did it again, dang it. John Gann. My name is Brian Cammers. I serve as board president. We have Dr. Katie, superintendent, Steve Eckert next to him, who is our treasurer, Daisha Hopkins, then we have Jeannie Toon, vice president, and Dr. Daniel Balsamic, in charge of the curriculum. So what we're going to do here is just kind of review the rules of participation. We're going to elect a chairperson to run this meeting, and whenever a motion is made, we'll then have a second and call questions, and then you can come down to the microphone, identify yourself, your residence, and you'll be given 2 minutes to address your question to the chairperson, who will turn to somebody that's hopefully sitting here that can answer the question. Each person will be allowed 1 time to speak on any topic. And voting will be completed by ballot if we need to. If there were just one nominee for something, we'll just do a voice vote. If you are a member of the school district, live in the school district, are an elector, please raise your hand. I think we've got ballots to hand out here from some of our administrators. Thank you, guys. Right behind you.
Strange seeing that many people out there.
Okay, we get everybody? Now we have to make some operational appointments. The first is to appoint someone to approve this meeting's minutes. And if I could, Mr. Sniff, would you be willing to be the approver of the minutes? Thank you very much. We also need a person to serve as a vote counter. Danielle, would you be willing to do that?
Yep.
Thanks. Maybe we can have a helper.
Yeah, I've asked Michael Maynard is going to
There he is.
help observe the count, and he's agreed to do that, so thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Mike. Since Larry Dukes is absent with a work commitment, we don't have a clerk at the moment, so I would like to, for this meeting, nominate Stacy Newcomer to serve as a temporary board clerk for this annual meeting. I will need a motion for that, or a second for that.
Second.
All right. Are there any other nominations for board clerk for this meeting? All right, and I think we can do things by voice then. All in favor of Stacy serving as the board clerk, signal by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, thank you, Stacy. All right. Now we have to nominate somebody to run this meeting, a election of a chairperson, And I'd like to nominate former board member Ann Wells to serve as chairperson for this 2021 annual meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for chairperson? All right. All in favor of approving Ann Wells to serve as chairperson for this meeting, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? All right, thank you, Ann, for serving in this capacity. Come on down.
Thank you, everyone. So the next item on our agenda is a review of the minutes of August 10th, 2020 annual meeting. The minutes of that meeting from August 10th, 2020 were reviewed by Brian Sniff and approved by him the 31st day of August 2020. At this time, I'll seek a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last year.
So moved.
Is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion? At this point, we'll just do a verbal vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Superintendent's report. I'd like to call upon Dr. Katie to give a school district and current strategic plan update.
Thank you, Ann, and welcome everybody. I'm really pleased to see some turnout for our annual meeting this evening. It's great to have such an engaged community, and my comments are relatively brief. My goal here is just to kind of give an overview of the status of the district and some things looking ahead into the upcoming school year and kind of reflect on some of the accomplishments of the past year. So, everything that drives what we try to accomplish as a school district is really contained in our mission and our values, and the mission and the values have been developed and refined through the district's long-term commitment to strategic planning. I'll talk a little bit about where we are in the strategic planning process presently, where we had participation by more than 700 stakeholders in the community, from students in all 4 of our buildings, staff, parents, and community members. But going back to 1993, where we began that process, and through that process, eventually this mission, these values were established. So again, through our unique all-campus setting, which is something that we're very proud of, and I'll kind of reference a little later that our community continues to tell us that the single campus is something that's highly valued. We use that strategic advantage to open the door to each child's future, and that we're passionate about academic excellence. We're committed to fostering positive student citizenship and dedicating to inspiring each and every student to flourish and meet their potential. So I talked a little bit about strategic planning, and there's kind of a collage of pictures up here that shows you a little bit of the activity that takes place, and it's something that the board is extremely committed to. We've just completed a 3-year plan that ran from 2018 through 2021. So as we're closing out that plan, we are working on finalizing elements of a new plan for 21-24 that we'll be presenting to the board this fall for approval. So again, that process was very active throughout the spring, including a community survey that hopefully you all had an opportunity to participate in, focus groups that were done that included parents and community members, focus groups with students in all of our buildings. And if you do want to really put a smile on your face, I encourage you maybe sometime to see if you can join me for the focus group with 2nd graders at PLE and talking to them about what they like about their school, what they don't like about their school, and what they would like to see more of or less of. And every once in a while, maybe recess pops in there as a more of, and maybe certain things for lunch might be a less of, but it is amazing how insightful a 2nd grader can be. So that is part of the process. So again, the board's been committed to this since 1993. This graphic really just shows one of the core values, and if I'd back up to that first page that showed the mission statement on the side, there was a piece that also showed core values of the district, and one of those is a commitment to continuous improvement. So strategic planning is one important component to our commitment to continuous improvement. Everything you heard tonight about the budget, one of the big drivers in terms of how we try to leverage those resources is driven by the priorities that get established in that strategic plan. So what you can see here is really an annual cycle where that strategic planning is done, it's initiated. We evaluate those action plans that are created. There's reporting that happens to the board every fall in October and in November. There's a lot of the district data that is presented to the board as a accountability component. We continue to progress and monitor. We practice something we call PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, where we are constantly monitoring our goals, evaluating our progress, and trying to improve our practices. So this approach to long-term planning commitment helps lead to that continuous improvement, helps us maximize the resources that are provided by the community. That's a trust that we certainly don't take lightly. I know the board certainly takes their charge from the community to use those resources effectively, very seriously. So you saw some information tonight about where that money goes and what it's invested in. You see a lot of it goes into staffing, the kinds of positions that are in place to support our students. As an example, those decisions are driven by that mission, those values, and that continuous efforts to do a better job of serving our kids and our community. So this is really kind of gives you a snapshot. So what we do is we take all this feedback, we look at data, we look at the performance of the district, and then we really filter that into these 6 key work systems. So teaching and learning, student services, technology, workforce development, marketing and community engagement, and facilities and operations are those 6 key work systems. So each of these areas then develops specific goals to advance the priorities of the strategic plan. So that is a piece that's being worked on and will be presented to the board in this fall. A couple of things I want to highlight of priorities. We talk about making our kids, doing everything we can to make our kids future ready. And I think we can all agree that certainly we live in very dynamic times. The world is a rapidly changing and evolving place. Technology alone drives rapid change. We know the workplace. I was just in a workshop a little bit on Friday talking about how the nature of work continues to change and evolve and what's predicted in the future. So we really try to look comprehensively at what do we have to do to really help make sure our students are prepared when they leave here to be ready for that kind of an environment. So over the past several years, and this has been a product of the previous strategic plan, is the creation of our graduate profile, which you've seen in many of our publications. It's highlighted in the annual report. You see these terms of contribute and create, compete, connect, commit, and care. We use those to try to be more comprehensive in defining what are the characteristics we're trying to help develop in our graduates so that they can leave us and be as successful and as happy as they can be. So that future ready is certainly a priority. How do we prepare kids? Again, that would be really at the core of our mission. And then really sustainability. So you heard a lot about the fiscal position of the district. We are in a strong financial position thanks to the generosity and support of our community. We've just had a major investment in our wonderful facilities on this campus. We have an incredible staff that works with our kids every day. So really from an operations side, so we talk about the teaching and learning side, primary focus being on that future ready concept, and then on the operations side, that's sustainability. How do we sustain and continue to improve and grow and have the resources that we need to make sure that we serve kids to the very best of our ability? And I used this picture last year, I just had to use it again. This was when we opened the New Horizon gym, and that kid with his arms spread wide open as they ran into the gym for the first time. I just always love that picture as they got to experience some of their new spaces. And then you can see we had a grand opening where after a lot of delay, we were finally able to enjoy that this spring to have a ribbon cutting and celebrate with the community these new spaces that are serving kids. And then another picture of some students enjoying the new grand stair as one of our outdoor spaces that we've been able to utilize, have concerts on and those kinds of things as well. So really one of the main goal, if you boil it down for the operations side of our organization, is how can operations be as efficient and as effective as possible so we can funnel the most resources possible into teaching and learning so that we can maximize the impact on the learning and the future success of our students. I kind of referenced this before about our campus, and again, this is something I had last year as we talked about the construction projects, which have went extremely well in the school district. This is an aerial picture that we need to get updated, because if you look at it closely, you'll see a lot of things have changed since it was last taken. But at the time that we went out to the community for approval for the construction projects that have recently been completed, more than 80% of the community stated how strongly they wanted us to remain as a single campus school district. And you know, there are discussions when this happens. We have lots of engagement with the community. We had many forums and focus groups and World Cafe meetings with community to get feedback and to talk about different solutions. One option always is, if you need additional space, do you ever consider going off campus? And it was very resounding that that's not what this community wants, and really helped drive the solutions that formed this last set of additions and renovations that we did in the district. And I think it was very wise of the community to continue to push us in that direction. I just have a few notes about return on investment. The district continues to be recognized for success and for quality. And some of these rankings, you can take them for what they are. They're ratings and there's rankings, but I just share these as evidence of positive perceptions of the district. The niche rankings we continue to do very well at is ranked as one of the best in our county. And just as a reference, I mean, Waukesha County is one of the highest, if not the highest performing county in the state of Wisconsin. Of 672, I believe it is, high schools in Wisconsin, that PHS was ranked number 13 and is in the top 4% nationally by U.S. News and World Report. I share that so that the community can see that there is a return on investment, that your schools are viewed as performing at a high level. Another thing that's been a priority, and you saw that one of the strands in the strategic plan, or one of the focus areas of a work system, is workforce engagement. We know that this is critical, and I think some of you are small business owners out here, and you may be in a position of others where it's difficult to staff your businesses currently. That's definitely a challenge that's going on. We know how critical it is that we have good people that we put in front of kids each and every day, whether it's the teachers in the classroom, or it's the administrators in the buildings, the counselors, the social work, the custodians who clean our buildings and do such a great job, our food service people, our bus drivers. We need this to be a good place to work. That's when people stay. So we make it a real priority to treat our employees well. And what's neat about the top workplace rating is that's 100% employee driven. They get a survey and they determine if we are viewed as a top workplace. And so for 10 of the last 11 years, our employees have rated our school system as a top workplace, and the evidence that we have in terms of retention, low turnover, and what we see on our own internal surveying with our staff is that we have high levels of satisfaction among our teachers, and we know, certainly anecdotally, that the reputation of the district and the word of mouth professionally among these staff has allowed us to recruit and attract very talented people when we do have openings. So it's something for us to be very proud of. We were the #1 rated mid-sized district through this process. And when all organizations, whether it's education or otherwise, we were the 23rd mid-sized organization through this ranking, which is a growth from last year. Just a couple other highlights that we're really excited about to share. If any of you have kids in the 4K program or have been through those classrooms, this has been, it's in its first year of implementation, but it's been really encouraging in terms of the academic success that we're seeing of students, as well as the joy and the happiness and everything that we hear from both the students and their parents. We implemented a very innovative thematic-based experiential learning approach for our 4-year-old students. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to see them, there will be opportunities certainly to tour the 4K classrooms in our school district. That level of engagement has led to learning results. So we've seen a 6% increase in letter identification. That's with capital letters. I think it was a little over 5% for lowercase letters for 4K in the first year of doing this, and a 10% increase in students meeting or exceeding benchmarks for identifying letter sounds. When you can walk in and talk to a 4-year-old who's working in a dig pit dressed as a paleontologist, and she explains to you that she is a paleontologist and knows what that word is and can use it in context, that really tells me something that we're onto something in those kinds of environments. I'm certain at 4 years old I had no idea what a paleontologist is, nor could I have said that word whatsoever. Some other things, we've included maker spaces in all 4 of our schools, and where we had them before, we enhanced those through this project. Maker spaces are those locations in which students can really do lots of design work. We have a design thinking protocol that we are working to develop or grow with our students in terms of their understanding and their ability to apply in terms of problem solving all the way down to 4K and 5K, and use that all the way through the system. And so these spaces, which were also outfitted with lots of equipment through the generous donations of our PTO, have been really successful. And part of the graduate profile includes some community service pieces as we talk about how important it is to contribute. And so 94% of PLE students and 100% of Asa Clark students were involved in those design thinking projects related to community service projects. So we were happy about that. Just want to share again, some of this is our unique all-campus setting. This is a picture of the new gazebo that was constructed in the outdoor classroom space. If you go to the PLE library and you look out the windows in the back, you would see this space. There's gardens out there and seating areas. This was constructed through a process of first design that was really kind of a contest and approval of our architecture students at the high school. And so they designed this and then came to a final design and constructed it. They did partnership work with our architects that helped with the whole campus projects that we just completed, and C.G. Schmidt, who was our construction partner. So for example, C.G. Schmidt put all of the footings in for underneath, and then really worked with our students and coached them through this process. I think it turned out great, and in partnership with Pewaukee Lake Elementary to provide this new space so students can go out and learn in this environment as well. So that's an example of how, as a campus, we have our students that can leave from a construction class in their block here and get over to a place like PLE and do this kind of work and that real authentic kind of learning. I just think that's a great example. We had second graders involved in a nature trail impact project this year. Our second grade teachers of a couple of our classrooms, one of the experiences they were having with students is taking them hiking on the wonderful trails that we have on campus. And the students started to notice that there was some trash out there and there was no place to sit. And they felt that we needed to do something about that. So these students researched, looked into what it would cost to put trash cans and put benches. They made a presentation to myself and to the building and grounds director and to other administrators, and we were able to provide them funding, and then they worked with the construction students at the high school who made the benches, and then the second graders painted those benches, and so they found a way to solve a problem and make their community better. And that, again, is another example of the partnerships and collaboration that can happen on our campus. At the high school, we have a priority in terms of engaging students with mentors into a career of interest. A lot of that does happen through our Insight program, if you're familiar with that. But that is a long-term goal that every student have that experience prior to graduation. And we took a nice jump in the last year from 3% of graduates to 32% of graduates having a professional in a career of interest to serve as a mentor for them. And so if any of you are interested and have some skills that you want to contribute, we are looking for mentors for our students to provide them that real-world network, and we can connect you with Danielle or Adriana and set you up for that experience. One of the things we're excited about is that people almost invariably return and are willing to do it again the next year because the mentor finds that experience so positive. And then one other highlight I would share, this was a strategic plan piece that was very important to the board. I think most of you are probably aware, probably all of you are aware that mental health issues have been very much on the rise with adolescents in particular. And so that's something that this board is very focused on. So one of the strategies that we had through student services was to partner with outside providers so that we could funnel kids to therapeutic resources while here on campus. If any of you have ever experienced trying to access mental health providers, they have very full schedules. It can be very difficult. It sometimes can take months to get an appointment because there's only so many available outside of the school day. And we've had great success on getting kids who desperately need that kind of help connected with therapeutic resources right here on campus during their school day as needed. And we already had 2 partners with Gals Incorporated and St. A's, and this year we were able to add Red Oak Counseling as a 3rd provider to fill a specific need in relation to AODA services. So we're excited that that partnership, again, was added. So throughout this year, I just want to reflect on finding a way. This was a year that was unlike any other. These things were done through a 100-year pandemic. And I share these because, school's a lot more than just what happens in the classroom. Obviously, that's the priority, and that's what's most important, the academic learning. But certainly all the activities that students are involved in are so critical for their mental health, for their development, for their happiness. And so we have pictures of a robotics club. I could have had drama pictures up here, music, football, basketball, right? We had great success. We had an incredible year in terms of success on the field with conference championships and state championships and all those kinds of things. But I think the biggest success was the fact that we were able to run these programs and these students were able to have that experience during such bizarre and challenging times. So finding a way is something we need to continue to do because obviously we're still wrestling with this. It's not completely off of the challenges that are in front of us, but we need to continue to find ways to make sure we provide students with all the experiences that we can. So this was something that we published last year, this Stay Safe to Stay Open. I actually kept the slide from last year's presentation where we're really kind of sharing this plan, and really I wanted to come back to this quote that we looked at the time from Helen Keller, that alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. The fact that you're here tonight engaged and interested in what's happening in your school system speaks to that. We're so fortunate to have a community that is as engaged, that cares about the school system, that supports its school system, and that helps solve problems. And I don't think that's going to go away. We're still going to have challenges to solve. We're going to have to look for common solutions so that we can resolve those issues. So I look forward to this upcoming year. In fact, I think it's going to be a great year. I'm really excited about the upcoming school year. Manichak, I told you I had a picture of you in here. I really like this picture of you with this little boy. We are so looking forward to the day when those buses are back up on our campus here in just a matter of a few weeks. If you talk to my 14-year-old, he's really lamenting the fact that how quickly this summer is going by. You might be experiencing that in your own households, but we're looking forward to it. We can't wait to have kids back up here. They're the ones that bring this place alive. And so like I said, I believe it's going to be a great year. And again, I appreciate you all being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Dr. Katie. So the next item up on the agenda is the approval of the tax levy. And I'd like to call upon Assistant Superintendent John Gahan and Board of Education Treasurer Steve Dankert to make any final comments, remembering that the formal presentation was conducted at the budget hearing.
Just a reminder tonight, the Board of Education sets a tax levy. The levy is proposed at $28,933,763. They do not set the tax rate. The tax rate is a byproduct of once we find out what the values are in the community. So the board sets a levy, and that is what the action is for tonight.
Yeah, I just would add that the levy is based on a preliminary budget adopted by the board in May of this year. And then when the state finalizes, and we talked about this earlier, but if you weren't here, when the state finalizes in October, the state aid and we get our membership counts from the third Friday in September, the board will finalize a budget, an actual budget, in the month of October that will then dictate to the local jurisdictions, city and village of Pewaukee, what those rates will be. So that's when the levy will be officially set in October.
Great. Well, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the levy.
Move to approve the tax levy as proposed and presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, well, you've all gotten a ballot. Those of you who are qualified to vote, write aye if you approve, or no if you do not. And the vote counters will come around and collect your cards.
Oops, hey, we passed them now, thanks.
Oh, we did our half, sorry.
It's all good, it's all good, it's all good.
I'll treasure it always.
I was told I could keep all of mine, so I can hand them out.
You're hoarding the cards.
58 to 1, the motion carries. Next up is the adoption of the resolution to establish a capital expansion fund and levy a tax. I'd like to ask Assistant Superintendent John Gann to give an explanation of the resolution.
As we looked at the tax levy before, a portion of that levy that was just adopted, $10,000 of it will be allocated to Fund 41. It's a capital expansion fund. The district has contributed to this fund since 2008, and it offers us advantages when it comes to the equalization aid formula and the impact of when we need to complete capital projects within the district. So it takes a separate vote to authorize that levy, which is the only source of funds that can go into that other than interest earnings on an annual basis.
I move to approve a tax levy in the amount of $10,000 for the 2021-22 fiscal year into the capital expansion fund.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Once again, we'll call for the vote with your ballots, and we'll set the vote counters in action.
Go on this side, couple.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Motion passes 53 to 4.
53 to 4, motion passes. Approval of the annual salary for Board of Education members. At this time, we're going to seek a motion concerning the Board of Education salaries, and just a little information or a little history. Board member salaries were raised to $4,400 at the 2014 annual meeting, and then to $4,500 at the 2020 annual meeting. So you have a little history on that. So at this time, I'll seek a motion for the board salaries.
I move the board salaries remain at $4,500.
Second.
The motion is made to hold steady, and second, is there any discussion? All in favor, please write aye. If you disapprove, no.
Thanks, Steve.
Motion passes 56 to 1.
Motion carried 56 to 1. Next on the agenda, approval of the transportation for students at district expenses, and I'd like to ask Mr. Gahan to give a little bit more background on this topic.
So Wisconsin statutes require that the school district transport all students that live in excess of 2 miles from the building where they attend school or live in a hazardous transportation area. Since we're on one campus here, the district has, as one of the powers of the annual meeting, to grant the authority to transport in excess of that. And we transport all students, this has been for over 25 years, transport all students early childhood through 5th grade. Due to the congestion, due to the walking, crossing the Prospect Avenue and the streets that are around the campus here, especially prior to having the second entrance on campus and not having an access point to get to there with sidewalks, I feel it's important that we transport those youngest kids to ensure their safety to get back and forth.
I move to approve the current district practice of providing transportation to all students residing within the school's attendance area in early childhood through grade 5, regardless of distance between home and school.
I'd like to second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Once again, qualified voters, write aye if you approve, no if you do not.
Motion passes 56-1.
56-1, motion passes. And the next order of business is to set the date for the next annual meeting in 2022.
I move to permit the school board to establish the date of the 2022 annual meeting at the discretion of the board during the month of August 2022.
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? one more time. Are we doing paper ballots?
Or we could do a voice vote.
Want to do a voice? Save your feet.
Everybody
All
good
in
with that?
favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? That looks like motion unanimously carried. And now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn as the business for tonight's meeting is concluded.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Motion carried. Thank you for coming,
Thanks for
everyone.
coming.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Quite a